Howdy gamers, let's talk about the runes for Kennen top lane. A lot of what Kennen's looking to achieve with his runes is to amplify his laning phase in one way or another. And the only runes that really help him do that are either Summon Aery and Conqueror. Both of them putting you in different trees, but both having their unique advantages. But in the top lane, it's very important, especially with Kennen, that you're winning the matchup. And if you're not winning the matchup through one means or another, then your champion really does fall off or like can't really function in a side lane. If you can't function in a side lane, then you can't farm and then you inevitably lose the game because of that. So what Kennen is looking for again is tools that amplify his damage early or amplifying his laning ability. So starting off with Summon Aery, it's the less common option, but with Summon Aery, your attacks and abilities send Aery to a target, damaging enemies, and then if you could heal or shield your allies, then you would also be able to shield them, but that's not the utility of Aery for Kennen. The utility of Aery is that it's effectively a damage keystone that's not really on a cooldown. The cooldown of Summon Aery is how long it takes Aery to come back to you. So that's almost every single auto attack in the top lane. And where Kennen can always get these one auto trades on the enemy, it makes that even more brutal for them. Especially where a lot of what you're looking to do is build up your W, and then auto attack the enemy once, and then activate the W. And then that's a pretty significant trade. Summon Aery is going to help you with that. Summon Aery is also going to help you with every instance of damage. And even into later stages of the laning phase or mid game, Summon Aery can still be giving you value as, again, the cooldown of Summon Aery is based on how long it takes for Aery to come back to you. And since you're such a short range champion, and a lot of what Kennen's kit wants to do is get on top of enemy champions anyways, you're going to be able to proc it multiple times in a fight, especially against melee champions, so you're either on top of them or they're on top of you. And in both cases, you're able to proc Aery multiple times and then therefore deal more damage because of it. But the main purpose of Aery, again, is just for the laning tool, where you're adding more damage to what you already do through your auto attacks, through your W and Q trades in the lane. And with that, with Summon Aery, if you have the extra poke against the enemy, and they don't have the ways to sustain it or endure it, then you just create a lane advantage that would otherwise not be able to happen. And if you can do that, you can put the enemy in a lot worse position, and then therefore have an item advantage over them, and then that's where you start scaling. None of the runes really offer Kennen great scaling options. You really get his scaling through itemization, so it's best off to amplify like what he's best at early, and then through doing so, you kind of double down on that, and that's the value out of that. For the secondary rune, you have good options in Nullifying Orb or Nimbus Cloak. In most matchups, you'd probably want to run Nimbus Cloak. With Nimbus Cloak, after you cast a summoner spell, you gain a movement speed increase that lasts for 2.5 seconds. The percentage movement speed increase is based on the cooldown of the summoner spell, so since you're using Teleport and Flash, you're always going to be getting really good value out of Nimbus Cloak. And even with Teleport, it's really good as it helps you get into position to land a meaningful ult, especially if you're flanking with your Teleport. So Nimbus Cloak works out pretty well for Kennen. You might not get great value out of it early game, but not so important since you're winning early game with just Kennen's kit and then the other runes. So Nimbus Cloak could act as a scaling rune for you in that sense of the utility that it offers versus like extra damage you could get from another rune. With Nullifying Orb, whenever you take magic damage that would reduce you below 30% HP, you gain a magic damage shield and effectively just makes you tankier in AP matchups top lane. So think about champions like Mordekaiser, Rumble, Cassiopeia, etc. So if you are in those matchups, consider running Nullifying Orb, especially if the enemy has extra AP champions on their team. So think about like Karthus Jungle, Orianna, Syndra Mid, etc. You could run this rune, especially in combination with an AP matchup top lane. But default, you're probably looking to run Nimbus Cloak as the most generally useful one. For the third rune, your best choice is Transcendence, as it offers you a scaling option. You don't need the extra movement speed from Celerity, even with Kennen's E. It's enough movement speed in any matchup, and the percentage increase really doesn't matter. With Absolute Focus, while you're above 70% HP, you can gain bonus AD or AP depending on your early game items. And with that, like the amount of AD you get early isn't as impactful as like it needs to be for this rune to really be that good. And then come mid to late game, having the 10% cooldown reduction would be more impactful than the ability power that you would inevitably get from Absolute Focus. So with Transcendence, pretty similar to Nimbus Cloak, it gives you scaling through utility. since it's going to give you 10% cooldown reduction at level 10. And since you're in the top lane, you're going to get to level 10 really, really quickly. And that cooldown reduction is really important for getting multiple rotations of your Q off, especially in a team fight, because that's all of your damage late game. So, great rune. If you're really, really, really greedy, like really greedy, I suppose you could run Absolute Focus, but I wouldn't recommend it. For the fourth rune, it's only Scorch. If you're running this page, running Gathering Storm is like super misguided in my opinion. As with Scorch in combination with Aery, you're just getting more damage for your poke. With Scorch, your next damaging ability hit sets the enemy on fire, dealing bonus magic damage based on your level, and it's only on a 10-second cooldown. So effectively, every time your Q and W is up, you're going to be able to deal more damage with them so long that you're hitting the enemy with the ability. So that in combination with Aery, and if you're playing the lane phase out properly and winning, then it makes the lane phase way more brutal for the enemy to deal with. And then through winning the lane, that's how you set yourself up to scale. The secondary runes for Kennen top lane, all the secondary runes are kind of low value. You could run something like Triumph Coup de Grace. You could run Taste of Blood Ravenous Hunter. You could also run Time Warp Tonic and then I suppose Perfect Timing, especially into matchups top lane like against bruisers that can turn onto around level 9 or so when they have one ability maxed. Then Perfect Timing can give you a lot of value as you have the one-time stopwatch around the time that they're actually strong against you. And then when they finally dive onto you, you can use a stopwatch to dodge their key abilities. So abilities like Irelia ult or Camille E, and then have your ult going. So they've dived onto you, they've wasted abilities, and you're damaging them while not being able to take damage. So, and then with Perfect Timing, it also gives you a little bit cheaper itemization into Zhonya's. And then with Time Warp Tonic, potions and biscuits grant you restoration immediately, and then also give you bonus movement speed. You would need to get refillable potion for this to continue to give you value, because you would be going Doran's Blade early, but that's completely doable with Kennen. You could alternatively just go for Cosmic Insight, but with Time Warp Tonic, it would make it so again that those champions that would dive onto you would have a harder time doing so, because if you're running something like Taste of Blood and Relentless Hunter against melee champions in the top lane, it really doesn't make a whole lot of sense. As with Taste of Blood, this is a tool to like offset ranged champions' damage to you in the laning phase. With Taste of Blood, you heal when you damage an enemy champion, and the heal is based off your level, and it's a really small amount, but it's only on a 20-second cooldown, so you can proc it multiple times throughout trading in lane. And then with Ravenous Hunter, you heal for a percentage of damage based dealt by your abilities. And with that too, you have to build this up, which is harder to do in the top lane, because with these rune options in the domination tree, they're based off bounty hunter stacks, and the bounty hunter stacks are based off unique takedowns. And to get unique takedowns in the top lane is a lot harder than other roles. So to have like the full percentage damage healing increase from this is a lot harder than other roles. And then once you have it, it might not even be useful for Kennen, because a lot of what you're looking to do mid to late game is just one-shot the enemy anyways. So it's a really misguided approach, especially into melee champions top lane. I think you get better value out of Perfect Timing and whatnot. I suppose you could run Conditioning and Overgrowth. It's an option like I never see, but it's pretty similar to Perfect Timing and Time Warp Tonic. It would help you endure the melee champions top lane once they're stronger. So you would have about 50 health from Overgrowth around level 12 or around 12 minutes or so, and then with Conditioning you gain plus 9 armor and magic resist after 10 minutes. So this in combination with your E is also going to give you more magic armor and magic resist, because it gives you a percentage increase. It's not that crazy, but any little bit for Kennen helps. But you could also run Tenacity and Coup de Grace, and that's really it. So if you're looking for a default for secondary runes for this rune page, I suppose Perfect Timing and Cosmic Insight is going to give you a lot of general value and would work in most matchups. And then for the adaptive runes, if you're running this page, I think you should go with Adaptive Force, and then Armor or Magic Resist, depending on your matchup. The reason I think the AD over the attack speed would be because you'd be looking to punish targets who are weaker early anyways. The attack speed helps you in more even matchups top lane. The extra AD just makes you hit harder on targets that can't retaliate anyways, so it's more meaningful. Every hit becomes more meaningful in that sense. And since you're running Adaptive Force, it's going to be AD early since you're building Dorn's Blade early. And then that's just giving you more damage every single hit. And that in combination with the W is also giving you more damage. So you should look to run Summon Aery page into matchups where you're stronger than them early and you know that you can beat them down. And when you do so, the reward is really, really strong because you effectively just take a champion out of the game. The other rune option you have is Conquer. Conquer's completely fine too, but you change the lane dynamic a bit. With Conqueror, basic attacks or spells that deal damage to enemy champions grant you 2 stacks of Conquer. This is only 1 stack if you're ranged, which Kennen is. And then Conqueror is giving you bonus Adaptive Force, which is going to be AD early, and then AP later for Kennen. When fully stacked, you heal for 15% of damage that you deal to champions. Since you win a lot of top lane matchups anyways, Conqueror can be looked at as a scaling option. The ability power offered is kind of whatever, but even though Kennen's range, he does have a lot of ways to build this up because of his multiple instances of damage in his abilities and through his auto attacks. And with Conqueror 2, the healing can be kind of impactful in 2v2s and 3v3s, but in 1v1s, it does help, but it's really not that crazy. As to stack it up, you have to spend multiple rotation, or you have to spend at least 1 rotation of your basic abilities, and then once those are down, then Conqueror's fully stacked, you could heal off the damage dealt by your ult, and then you could heal for the damage dealt by the second rotation of your basic abilities. So it is something, but it's not that crazy. With Conqueror 2, it's going to give you extra ability power, and it's going to give you extra ability power at timings in the game that you otherwise wouldn't be able to achieve them, usually around levels like 9 to 14. And with that, Kennen's ult has I think it's like 160 AP scaling on his ult whenever you fully get it off. So you can add a lot of damage to that, and you also add a lot of damage to your second rotations of abilities because you're just adding more ability power to them. So with Conqueror, it puts you in the precision tree. Your only good rune options from here are Triumph. If you like, the attack speed's okay, but you should be looking to run Legend Tenacity. If the enemy has literally no CC, then sure, run the attack speed. It's fine, but the attack speed is just like completely luxury. In most top lane matchups, they're going to have like some form of micro CC, whether it be like a Riven stun or like an Ornn W hit or something. But like come mid to late game, if the enemy is interrupting with you with CC, then like you effectively can't get a good ult off. So think about champions like Thresh, Leona, etc. And if they're interrupting your ult, they're really nullifying you as a champion. You don't want that. So Legend Tenacity does go a long way. But if the enemy literally has no CC, then running attack speed is like okay. It might give you an extra hit like in a team fight or something. Because you do have to stack up this attack speed. It's not so useful from the beginning of the game. So that's that. And then for the secondary runes, it'd still be Coup de Grace, and then you would still have like the option of going like Nimbus Cloak Transcendence second. I suppose you could also go Ravenous Hunter Taste of Blood. It would kind of have better synergy with Conqueror. And then all the secondary runes kind of stay the same. But if you're looking for a default, I would recommend Nimbus Cloak and then Transcendence. Because you get so much scaling out of both of these. And with Conqueror, you're also kind of playing for your scaling anyways. And then the shards would stay the same, but depending on your matchup, you should look to run attack speed if you're against champions that can retaliate pretty often and pretty early. So levels 1 to 4 are champions that could retaliate. So probably champions like Irelia, maybe a Kali, where the champions that have a lot of utility, like slipperiness. So champions that can get away, champions that can go in and out, because then the attack speed helps you actually get your attack off on them and then also be in a safer position after the auto attack is done. So with Conqueror, again, it gives you extra ability power and then it also gives you a little bit of healing. But the way you would stack it up in lane 2 makes things kind of brutal, as if you're really dogging the enemy down with your W into Q and then running them down to lane, then Conqueror does gain a lot of value, as it makes it very lame for the enemy because you've already built up ability power against them by hitting them, and then if they choose to go onto you, then you have your E and then WQ to stun them and then run away, and then turn onto them again once you're at a safe distance. So it makes things very lame for the enemy. And if you don't need summon Aery to poke them down early, then you just have better scaling through the precision tree. You gain access to more damage through Conqueror, mid to late game, and then through Coup de Grace. So you do have just better scaling with this page. Triumph is kind of useful, and then Legend Nasty is kind of useful. But all of these in combination do just equate to more scaling than you can otherwise gain access to through the sorcery tree and through running Summon Aery. But with Summon Aery, you can win the lane harder and then therefore scale through itemization. So depending on your matchups, that's what you should be looking for. So that's really it with Kennen runes. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments. If this video helps you, leaving a like on the video helps me. If you're interested in watching me play or talk about League of Legends, you can check out my Twitch. It's twitch.tv/SawYourNelshin. I play League of Legends there, and man, I used to main Kennen support. Back in the day, it was like season 4 or 5. I loved Kennen support. What a champion that was. Bring that shit back. Top lane Kennen, whatever, man. Like, Jesus, Kennen support was so good. Bye-bye.